Hello guys, how are you doing today? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you all. Just give me a second, we start shortly. Okay, good. So let me turn on my camera real quick. Okay, do you see me guys?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, let's start. So my name is Stanislav Kim. Currently, you can call me Stan. Currently, I'm working as an ASDAT in Hogarth Corporation, and Hogarth itself is working with one of the with actually biggest companies in the Bay Area, which you may know. So as an ASDAT, I create test cases working on automation, as well as I am adjusting the all the processes in my company, at least the one that belong to testing, creating CI/CD, and so on and so on and so on. So before that job, I worked in San Francisco, my company called Climate Corporation, and I also worked then as an SDAT. So pretty much the similar experience, but we use different tools. Um, in my company, there were like three other SDATs, and we were maintaining, like, if I'm not mistaken, over 20 products, and they were all basically we were selling the digital products to the farmers. So we sold them the products like weather forecast, choosing the better fertilizer, water mapping, and so on and so on and so on. Me as an as that, I had to maintain those products, make I had to make sure that all the features worked as it's supposed to be. I worked on the testing backend as well as the testing the front end. So this is pretty much it about me, and I would like to make a small quick around table. Mm, please go ahead and unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you have one, and tell me why are you here and what your end goal is. So let's start with Aj. One more thing, if I pronounce your name incorrectly, sorry guys, so the first one gonna be Aj. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. My name is AJ.
AJ, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
Thank
straightforward.
you. Sorry. How you
uh,
doing?
yeah, I'm currently a QA lead.
Mm,
I work for a company that sells video products,
mhm,
and my reason for being here today is I'm looking to learn automation.
mhm,
Um, I lead a couple of automation testers,
mhm,
also some manual testers.
mhm.
But I would like to get better at automation so I can talk to my team and be able to work with them
Mhm.
in tandem. So that's why.
Okay. Okay, good. Do you happen to have an experience in programming language, just in JavaScript or Java? or
No, no,
Python?
I don't. That's why I'm here to learn.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so one more thing, before we start, my course is meant to be for beginners, like for the people who have no experience in programming, and just for beginners, very basic stuff, just the simple stuff. We want you to listen, to know some basics, and once you end my course, once you finish my course, before you start learning automation. So the next will be gonna be Dmitry.
Sure. Hi everyone. So I'm new to QA.
Mhm.
Like overall, like I started this path like this year. I did took some classes in one of the schools, but they mostly basically had a theory, so there was not like hands-on experience. So kind of still liking it. And when I was looking at previous trials on YouTube from you guys, I see that you actually do a lot of practicing, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Dmitry.
Yep.
Olga.
Yes. Hi guys. Right now it's 10 o'clock in New York. So for somebody, good evening or good night. Yes. I'm here because I QA, and the most what I was doing is a manual QA, and right now I'm looking like I'm on the I'm on the job market because my position was eliminated, so I feel some gaps in the knowledge, and one of those is automation. So our company was running Java applications, so I have seen the code. I can read the code, but I cannot write. So to me it will be like some nice addition. I guess what I know at this point in time.
Okay.
Excited,
Cool.
to join the class. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, good. Anatoly.
Hi guys.
Hi, Anatoly.
I don't have experience at all. It's first time for me.
No, okay, that's totally fine. I've taught a lot of students who had like no experience, just like you, and they eventually found their jobs. So that's totally fine. And what's your end goal? Are you planning to be a QA automation engineer, or you're looking to be a front-end engineer?
First of all, maybe a manual tester, and after maybe automation. Yeah.
Okay, why not? Seems good to me. Sounds good to me. Thank you, Marina.
Hi guys.
Hi,
My name is
Marina.
Marina. I'm housewife and I would like to try myself in something new. I took some courses about Python and I like it. Yeah, and I would like to try. And my friend Yulia, she was a teacher in your school, suggested me this course.
What was her name?
Julia.
Ah, Julia. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I would like to try.
Okay, good. Good. So the last but not least, thank you very much, Marina. Lala, are you here?
Okay. Hello.
Hello, Lala.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Okay. Thank you. And I'm just, I have just here 2 months. That's why my English is not so good, but I can try to do something. My relative live in Pittsburgh. He says that I can go to your course. He is working as automation engineer, and that's why I want to try myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, sounds good to me. Good job. Thank you very much. So let's start. Today I'm going to show you some JavaScript basics, and wait a second, let me share my screen. So I hope now you're able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we start with JavaScript basics, why we need JavaScript. We're going to answer all those questions. So JavaScript is one of the popular, if not I would say that it is one of the popular programming languages for beginners. you ask me why, and I say that the entry level, you know, you don't have to install a bunch of stuff on your computer, like compilers, different libraries, and so on and so on, before you can start something to type something like hello world, and that's it. So today we're going to start with the basics. So JavaScript has dynamically typed language. In other words, we can say that we create, before that, let me say something. So today we're going to learn the variables. Let me type it down for you. What is variables? What is variable, and why do we need variables? It's quite simple. Variable is just like a box for the storing the data, or a container, or a garage, or it can be basically a storage for storing something. And we're going to talk about the variable. So the very first thing that you should know, if you're familiar with Java or any or Python or whatever, in JavaScript, we can say that we create variables, and then in the process we decide which data type this variable will be. I know for right now it's kind of complicated, but I hope, you know, this idea will stuck in your mind for a little while. And once I show you everything, you will understand why I'm telling you this. So once again, we do not have to specify what kind of the data type of the variable is. We can decide it later. So, but let's start from the beginning, how to create a variable. As you know, variables is just a storage or container or a box for the storing the data. There are, for right now, 3 ways on how to create a variable or how to declare a variable. In all 3 cases, we're gonna use a keyword. What is actually a keyword? Keyword is just like, in other words, can be said that it might be as a magic word. You know, the keyword, the magic word, it just, you have to know it. So the first one that I'm going to show you will be a const keyword. Then I'm going to give my variable a name. It's very important. So const variable, for example. And then after it, I declare the variable const, then I use the name of my variable. And after it, I want to assign a value to it. To do that, I have to use the equal sign. After the using equal sign, I can put whatever I want, but I have prepared value for this variable. So it will be in quotes, just a message, for example, const keyword to define, for example, to define a variable that cannot be reassigned. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later. Let's just leave it. So once again, I use the keyword const, then I use the name, put the name of my variable. After it, I put the equal sign. Equal sign in JavaScript that I'm going to assign something to something. So in this case, I just assigned the right part to the left part. And I said, hey, I'm going to create a const variable, which has name const variable. And then I'm going to put a value, and the value for this variable will be in quotes message const keyword to define a variable that cannot be reassigned. Good. So do you have questions so far?
Yes, I noticed that you put a semicolon at the end of your
code.
So to separate your lines of code, you always have to put a semicolon?
Not necessary. So according to my experience, semicolons, they're not required. It just depends on which company currently you're working on. And for example, in some of the companies, I know that they are not using semicolons at all. Like, just for example, they finish the line and then from the next line, they start typing something else and that's it. But I would recommend to put semicolons once you end, any statement or any code statement. It's recommended to put semicolon. It says, yeah, as you said, basically, it's period. We're done with this line. It's a very good practice to put semicolon. I suggest you. Good.
Yeah, and really quick, when you say statement, are you referring to the text?
Yes.
That's written there, or the line itself?
The whole line. So the whole line can be called, a code statement, I would say so, yeah. But in this case, this message or this line means that I'm creating or declaring the variable, which has with the help of the const keyword, then I put the name of my variable, then equal sign, which means that I am going to assign a value to this variable, and the value in this case, it will be this value, in quotes, a message. Good?
Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. So the next thing, or the second way on how to create a variable to use a different keyword. The second keyword will be let. So on the next line, I'm going to create a new variable, which will be, for example, let variable. Why not, right? Then in quotes, I'll put a different message. So defines a variable with restricted scope. So we'll talk about scope later. It's just for right now, for you guys, it will be just some random value. I can put in quotes whatever I want, even, I don't know, Alibaba or Aladdin or Jasmine or whatever. So it doesn't matter. So once again, I use the keyword let, then the name of my variable. After it, I put equal sign. That means that I'm going to assign something to the variable let variable. And I created a value to it. And this is a value for the variable let variable. Good. Semicolon, that means that I'm done with this line. And the last but not least, I can use the keyword var. So var variable, and then let me put something inside of it. So I can say that works same as let, and can be seen in all the books or browser versions. That's it. So before that, before this let, people used in JavaScript keyword var, but now we use keyword let. It's just a new style which came in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, or 15. Yeah. So now for nowadays, if you want to create a variable, you should use either keyword let or keyword const. Either or should work. But if you ask me what's the difference between the let variable and the const variable, there is a big difference. So for example, if I want to let me just put it some keyword methods, and I'll give you an example. I'm going to create a variable, for example, declaration. Now I want to console log variable declaration. This is declaration. So place it right here. So what is actually console log, and why my variable declaration doesn't have a value, right? I hope you ask yourself these two questions. in JavaScript, you may know it's not necessary that your variable in this state should have a value. So it's this can be skipped. I will talk about it during my course, but for right now, guys, you should just accept it that the variable may not have a value. And and the second question is, what is console log? Console log actually helps us to see, or in other words, to call our code over here in the right window. So you see keyword console here and console here. So if I click on the run button, this procedure will execute my code in the left part. And once it hits to the console log, it will just put the result of executing this variable. And in this case, it will be undefined. And this is actually what we want. And by default, every variable which doesn't have a value, it has a value undefined. So imagine, instead of let me call this variable. So if I call this variable, let variable, you will see its value over here. Defines, oh, actually I have a typo over here. Defines a variable with restricted scope, and that's it. So once again, let's go back to our previous experience. And by default, if your variable doesn't have a value, its value will be undefined. Good. Okay. Questions?
Yes, so you're saying between the keywords,
Yeah.
const and let. I'm still trying to understand, what is the biggest difference between those two keywords?
Yeah, I'll show you right away. Okay. So I created a variable declaration over here. Good. Now in JavaScript, I can use the same variable, and on the next line, I can say that the value will be 5. And now let me call the result of that variable, or let me run my code again. So if I run my code, before assigning a new value to it, this value was undefined. Now it has a new value, which is 5. And that means, with that said, I reassigned its value from undefined to 5. Good. Is it clear, AJ?
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah.
And okay, and let's try to do the same thing with const variable. So on the next line, for example, right here, I'll just put it 2, right? And logically saying, we may assume that the value should be 2, right? This thing works for let. That means that if I reassign the variable const variable, its value should be changed to 2. But if I run my code, it will say that assignment to const variable. Do you see that? That means that this trick, this exact trick, doesn't work with a const variable. That is why this is a difference. Is it clear now?
Yes. So I guess my question would be, what is the purpose of the const variable then?
Okay, good. So imagine that you have to work with, you will be actually working with a lot of code, and for some reasons, you will have variables such as email, full name, like the constants. Those values shouldn't be changed during your code mutation. For example, you take your full name or your email or whatever, your password, and then you do you do some manipulations with that strings or, with that data. And as a result, your code is not working. To avoid it, you have to just, let's say anchor those kind of the data. And you should say to your browser or JavaScript, hey, you can work with my code, but you are not allowed to change the certain values. That is why we use const variable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So the next thing that we are going to learn, the method type of. It can be like this or can be like this. Okay, good. What is actually type of? Type of will actually say us, for example, you're working with some sort of the data and you don't know what the data type it is. So if you would like to know what kind of the data type you are working with right now, you should use, or you can use method either type of or type of. Those things basically mean the same. So let's find out what kind of the data type this variable has, what kind of the variable let variable has, what kind of the data type var variable has. So to do that, I should use console log, and in console log, I can put quotes, and in quotes, I'll say type of, and then, for example, const variable. I would like to see what my console log will show me. Type of const variable is, and I personally like to put errors to see how it looks like. And then I should use type of keyword, type of, and in quotes, I can put the name of my const variable. Let's have a look. And if I run my code, that thing is not working because of this is a mistake. And if you put 2 slashes before your code in JavaScript, it will disable that piece of code. So if I run my code right now, you will see that type of const variable is string. If you want to put it on the same line, you can put plus sign and then quotes. And if I run my code again, you'll see type of const variable is string. Good. Sometimes students ask me, do we have to necessarily put, the quotes inside of my console log before we actually console log something? Of course, you can do this. If I run my code, you will see a string. But imagine that I'll have here another console log. Let me copy this guy over here. And if I run my code, you'll see 1, 1, 1, and then string. For me right now, that doesn't make any sense, right? I do not know what console log should I use. And for that is why I want to put a beautiful message before my console log to know what exactly I am trying to console log. So in this case, it says type of const variable is string. It's nice and beautiful, and I know what I am console logging right now. Let's try to do the same operation for the let variable and var variable. So I can simply copy this part of code and this part of code and just substitute the values. Okay, good. Now, if I run my code, you can see the type of const variable is string. Type of let variable is also string, and type of var variable is also string. So now we know that if you have a text or the textual data enclosed in quotes, this is a string. So now let's answer simple questions. Simple question: how many data types are in JavaScript? And I can answer that there are currently 8 data types. And I'll show you, I'll make a small intro for you guys with them. So let's start with data types. And then one more thing before we proceed, you can stop me at any moment and say, hey, could you please explain me that? I do not understand. That's totally fine. This is just a part of the studying process. And this is how, not exactly how the course will be looking like, because we will do a lot of practice. I will be working with you. You will be doing the classwork. You will have a lot of tons of homework. You will do your project homework, but I'll make a small course presentation right after I finish today's lecture. Are we good in this one? Yes, no. Hold on. What am I doing here? It's free course. Why it's so complicated? Okay, good. Okay, so now let's start with data types. There are 8 main data types in JavaScript. And let's start with number 1. And the number 1, this is actually also mean command. I'm going to put comments for it. And the first one, as you may know, this is a string. So this guy is used to represent a textual data. The value should be put either in a single or double quotes. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. Let, for example, first name, and then in quotes, I'll put some value, for example, Stan. So it can be either single quotes or double quotes. This thing, just like semicolon, depends on what company are you working on. I personally prefer single quotes, but some people like double quotes. So basically just, it depends on you, what you like more. So let's stick with single quotes. So the next thing, let's let's just make sure that I am working with string. So in console log, and in console log, I want to put a message, for example, type of the variable first name. So what should I put inside of my console log once I put comma? For example, who wants to answer? Any volunteer? AG, do you want to answer? If I want to know what kind of the data type I am currently working with, what should I put in my console log?
I am not sure.
You're not sure? That's not, I mean, that's totally fine, but the hint is on the display. On the screen, you should see.
Oh, type of.
Type of, okay. Let's stick with this. I like this answer.
Type of.
Type of,
Let variable.
First name.
Wait a second. AG is answering right now. Good job, Olga. But AG, what should I put inside of the type of?
Yes, I agree. First name.
Oh, okay. First name. So let's try it out if it works. Good. Let me run the code. And yes, this is a string. So type of the variable first name is string, but let me put plus sign. If you put comma, that will just put your value on this new string, but I want this value to be on the same string. so that it makes more sense to me, right? So type of variable first name is string, which is good, right? Good job, good job, good job. So string is pretty much simple. Let's go with to the next one. So the next one will be number. In JavaScript, we use numbers. Sorry, number. So number, we use number is used to represent a numeric data, or let's say just like in regular math, we have infinity, then just like in regular math, we have minus infinity and none. So one more thing that I want to mention, that numbers, come on, numbers can be written with or without decimals. Okay, good. In JavaScript, just like in any other programming language, we need numbers, and we have regular numbers, we have decimal numbers, we have positive numbers, negative numbers, infinity, minus infinity, and none. So let's make a small example. So let age, for example, is equal to 20. That let special value, for example, 1 will be infinity. Then let me copy this guy. And then special value 2 will be minus infinity. And on the next line, I can just paste it again. Special value will be none. And n. Okay, good. Now let's console log it to make sure that we are working with numbers. So console, for example, console log type of the variable, for example, age is okay, good, then plus sign, and then the name of my variable that I want to console log. So Olga, do you want to what should I actually put here? Yeah, I got stuck.
Type of age.
Okay, but you see that I see a red underline here, something is missing. So
Oh,
what should
it's
I?
this is single quote, right?
Yeah. So
Just add it.
okay, single quote, and what else after it?
You can put plus or whatever. You did plus, right?
Yes, I did plus.
Type
What else?
of.
Type of.
Open parentheses. I mean, what is this? Parentheses, right?
Parentheses, yes. And what should I
Yes,
put?
and puts age.
Okay, yeah, let's try this out. Yes, your code is working. Perfect. Good job. Thank you. Okay, let's proceed. Actually, the same thing should work with special value, with any of the special values. Let's run the console log and we'll see it's still number, and it will work with none as well. So if I put it here, and then if I run my code again, you'll see the type of variable none is a number as well. So questions?
What is the none stands for?
So none is.
I mean, yes.
None is acronym for the words not a number.
Oh, I see. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I noticed you're using the variable let quite a bit. Is that probably the most common used variable?
Yes, yeah. To be honest with you, yes.
Okay.
For most of the time, during my daily job, I try to use let because at the beginning. Sometimes I'm not sure what variable will be changed eventually, what variable will not be changed eventually. But just a small peek for you guys. If I try to, if I want someone to review my code, we have inbuilt program that will check my code, for if I can make any improvements in my code. For example, there is a program which may, scan my code and say, hey, for example, on this line is not being changed later in your code. So please change from let to const and so on and so on. This is how it will be your daily job. Good. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So maybe you may know why we have none and where the none actually comes from, why it's actually a number as well. So to answer that question, imagine that you work with numbers, right? Something like 1 + 1, 1 + 1, and so on and so on and so on. Your program worked perfectly, but there were some mistake, like some random mistake. And when you, for example, imagine that you are working with calculator, you just, subtracting numbers, multiply them, and your program perfectly worked. But for some reason, once you called equal sign, press the equal sign, you will see a none. So in this case, none actually helps you to understand that the function that were made, which were making some sort of the calculations for you, was it for, subtracting something or multiplicating something, as a result, you didn't get an actual number. You get an error, which should be a number. The program understands that this value should be eventually a number, but for some reason, because of your program is not working, that is why you are getting none. But in JavaScript, it's still the data type of none is still a number. Good. Okay, good. So the next thing that I'm going to show you, pretty much easy. It's a Boolean. So that thing can be either true or false. Let me put true or false in quotes. So imagine that we have to, just like in any other programming language, we need a special state, condition, which will determine what we should do next. For example, you are creating programs that's supposed to sell alcohol to people, and you should create a basic validation verification. So if the person is older than 21 years old, then yes, and he has an ID, then yes, we can sell him alcohol. Or if in all other cases, like if he doesn't have an ID, or if he is younger than 21 years old, then in these cases, we shouldn't sell him because it is prohibited. It's against the law. And for those kind of scenarios, for those conditions, we should use conditions or the Boolean value. It's either true or false. For example, turn on something, turn off something, and so on. So let me show you like a basic example. I'm going to create a variable, for example, good specialist. And the value of it will be true. That means that, yeah, you can see this is true. Then on the next line, I'm going to create an opposite variable. For example, bad specialist. And if I want to keep the logic, for example, if I want that specialist to be still good, then in this case, in JavaScript, I can put false. That means, no, I'm not bad specialist. That means that I am good specialist. And we will do some exercises during my course. I'll create some more detailed examples for you guys once you start learning JavaScript with me. Hopefully, then I'll show you more examples on how this Boolean works. But for right now, imagine this is like, you know, Boolean is just like a switcher. You won't turn on something or you won't turn off something, you know, one state or another state, either or. So good. So let's just make sure that this is Boolean. So in console log, I want to put a message, for example, type of good specialist, is, put some errors, then plus sign, and then what should I put then? Lala, can you help me? What's missing? What's missing in my code?
Oh, I cannot answer it.
You cannot answer. Okay, but okay, let me give you a hint, a help. The answer is already on the screen. If you look, you know, in my code above, you will see what should I type.
Type of
Okay.
type of just a
parentheses.
minute. Okay, just a minute. Type of specialist.
Yeah,
I
good
think.
specialist, right?
Yes,
Because I'm
good
trying to
specialist,
console
yes.
log you. Okay,
Yes.
and if I put it inside, and if I run my code, you will see the type of it is Boolean. Good job, Lala. And you were saying that you don't know. You know, okay, good. So the next thing that I'm going to show you will be, okay. Now, nothing, sorry, nothing or empty object. Okay. So I'm going to create a variable. Let, for example, variable broke will be equal to null, and that's it. So, and if I should console log null. So type of broke is then quotes and then Anatoly, could you please help me? What should I put next?
Type of
Type of
nothing of
broke, right? Okay. Is it good? You know, this syntax is, does this thing is the same as this one? Have a look. This line compares this line and this line. Oh, actually I can put plus sign. Okay, now don't forget about semicolon. Is this line the same as this one line? Can you answer it, Anatoly? Yes, no?
no.
No? Why?
I forgot these words, but after good specialist, we have two columns, or what is it? I don't know.
Parentheses, you mean? So, but if I run my code, will I able to see the same result or not?
I don't know. Try.
Okay, if I run my code, you'll see the same result. Why? Because as I said at the beginning, these two methods are the same. You can either use type of without parentheses, or you can use type of with help of using the parentheses. It's either or, but basically it's that thing actually means the same thing. So let's not focus on null right now because it's a little bit complicated. You won't be working a lot with null. And just all you have to know about null, just it's nothing or empty object. Good.
Can
And
I Sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. I noticed you have a misspelling. So you had let broke equal null,
Uh-huh.
but then
Yes.
in your console log it was typed boke. So I noticed that it still went through. So my question is, if you had a misspelling there,
In quotes, in quotes here, you mean? There
okay,
was a
so
mistake,
yeah,
misspelled right
so-
here, right?
yeah. So that wouldn't affect the output, right? It was just you're only seeing the text as a result.
Exactly. This is how it works. But imagine if I had an typo here, then if I run my code, you'll see it undefined.
Yeah. Okay. that
Yeah,
makes-
if you ask me why, it's because I do not have this variable. I didn't declare it, that I don't have variable bulk.
Right.
But if I create it, like just for training purposes, I'll say 1. So in this case, what the answer will be? AG.
That would be
Hold on, take your time.
it would be a number. Is that right?
Yes, this is totally right because 1 is just a number, right?
Right.
Okay, good. So this part, the left part, is basically is just a simple textual data. What kind of the data type it is actually? Katerine, can you answer this question? What kind of the data type is highlighted piece of code or the code that I highlighted? Katerine, are you here? Okay, seems like she is AFK. Marina?
I think it's a string.
Yes, this is a string. Can you tell me why? Can you tell us why?
Because it's between that signs. I forgot.
Quotes, right?
Yeah.
It's enclosed in quotes. This
Yeah.
is why. That is why it's textual data, and that is why it's a string. But yes,
Mhm.
totally correct. Good job. So let's proceed. Okay, yeah. So the next thing that I'm going to show you will be number 5, and the number 5 will be that actual object. This is a place we can say for storing more complex data. So we will come back to my core in my course a little bit later, but as you can see, during today's lecture, we can see that each variable can contain only one value at the same time. So const variable can contain only one value, which is right here. Let variable, one value. Var variable, only one value. First name, one value. Age, one value. But imagine that we have to work with some sort of the data or some sort of the storage that will work, that will contain more than one value at the same time, more complex, that that thing, let's say, it will have a more complex data structure. So for those kind of the things, we need objects. That is why. So object, this is just like a variable, just like a variable. It may contain different data types inside of it. So for the training purposes, I'm going to show you a simple object. For example, let, I'm going to create something like scheme, for example, and inside of it, to create an object, I should put curly brackets. And inside of the curly brackets, I should put HTML, for example, and then, I don't know, scheme.html. Then CSS, and then scheme.css file. Then what else? JavaScript file, and then scheme.js file. So currently in my objects, as you can see, 3 values. So we're going to talk about objects in one of my last lectures during my course. For right now, let's not focus on this one for right now. I want you to just keep that in mind, that if you want to store one value At the same time, you can create just a simple variable, but variable itself can contain an object. An object itself may or can contain a lot of values at the same time. But as I said, we're going to talk about objects later. Good. So the next thing that I'm going to show you will be undefined. Undefined. This is number 6. This is also a data type, and I believe you have already seen it. Today, we can say that a variable without a value has the value undefined. So just like before, for example, I'm going to create a variable. For example, let undefined variable, and that's it. And now I'm going to create another variable. Let b or undefined variable 2. Okay, and that value will be undefined. So in both scenarios on the line, in this case, and this thing actually will mean the same thing. And if I console log it, so console log, and in console log, I'll put type of the variable. Let me just copy this guy. And plus sign, and right here, sorry, let me copy it and paste it right here. Okay, good. So if I run my code again, I'll see that it has a value undefined, even though it has no value in it. So by default, if you are creating or declaring the variable, by default in JavaScript, its value will be undefined. And it is in the second case, if I let me console log this thing as well. If I run it, its value will be also undefined. Why? Because its value is undefined. Good. Do you have questions?
For what purposes do we use this particular data type?
I will tell you when we will talk about objects, when we will learn in objects, it will be in the very end. But for right now, I can say for most of the cases, you won't be, dealing with undefined unless you make some mistake in your code, and as a result, you get undefined. And it appears that for some reason, I don't know how, but you forgot to assign a value to one of the variables that you used.
Could it also be, and this is just a question, but if you're putting some programming together where you may not have the information yet, a certain data point or a value, could you utilize this particular data, this data point for that?
You don't have to necessarily to do it, because it will be done by default. For example, you are just creating what you can do, you can just create bunch of the variables, different variables, and then their values by default, they will be undefined. But once you start manipulating with those variables, for example, you use variable number 1, and then you assign to it a new value, for example, 1, then you assign the next variable another variable, for example, it will be a string with your full name, and so on and so on. That means that you will later on, you will fill your undefined variables with the actual values.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that will work. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, and so far we have 6 data types, and we have 2 more data types. So what are they? those things can be skipped, at least for beginners, like for 100% sure. And the first one, number 7, will be symbol, and number 8 will be big end. So there are 8 data types in the JavaScript, but 6 we use for most of the part. You will be using only 6 of them. And these two, symbol and big end, you won't be using like at all. I'm pretty much sure. Like I talked to a lot of the front end engineers, and not all of them work with symbol or the big end. But during the interview, your interviewer may ask how many data types are in the JavaScript. For in most of the cases, according to my experience, I also, do some interviews in my company, and sometimes if I see that someone knows JavaScript, I definitely will ask this question. And most of the people, they just saying 6 data types. I would say so. I myself do not work with symbol or big end. I haven't worked with them, like according to my experience, but I know that there are basically 8 data types. You do not necessarily know them, but if your interviewer asks this question, you might say, hey, there are like 6 data types commonly used, and there are 2 extra, like symbol and big end. I almost didn't, I know them, but I didn't use them. And that answer will be totally fine. It's okay. Good. So now let me give you a small idea how the project looks like. To do that, in our project, we are going to work with Azure DevOps. I'll get you familiar with Azure DevOps a little bit during my course. This is how my course will look like. We have our common repository. We have a README file. This is a README will be as your documentation. Then if I open the repository, this is just like a storage of our code. You can see that different folders over here: classwork, documentation, practice, homework. You will see students folders actually over here, and you will be pushing or committing, or in other words, uploading your code on our server, which is actually Code Basics. I will check your code. I will create you tasks. For example, how does the task look like? You'll see it right here. For example, you can see it right here. Someone has already completed his task. This task 1276 is under review section. That means that I have to check it as soon as possible. And I can see that 3 students are still working on something. 1 student hasn't started working on task homework 11 yet. So where we actually work, our main idea in Techstart, we have to make our process similar to the work experience. So once you start working on the actual job, you won't be lost. You know how the whole thing actually works. And that is why we use Visual Studio Code. I'll talk about Visual Studio Code a little bit later, but imagine this Visual Studio Code is just like a Microsoft Word for the creating a code. And you will see different folders over here. You will have your own folder. I will tell you what to do and what exactly you should do here. And you will be committing and pushing your code from here to our website. And each of the topic from our curriculum will be related to the project that we are doing. For example, if I open the documentation, we start with HTML basic, then CSS, then later on the lesson number 3, we'll do today the same exact lesson that we started today. Then we move to functions, then strings, numbers, booleans, array, and so on and so on and so on. This is how
question about like manual, like let's say like because it's includes with manual position, and how would it actually like present it at our resume, like how it's going to benefit us, because I know it's a first step for automation, like to get into automation like course, and like how better understanding of automation, you need to do like coding basics to know how it's work. But let's say if somebody won't do automation and just interested in manual, will it benefit them in any way when they will be applying for manual position? Is there any of these features actually covered with automation sometimes?
Yeah. So if you want to take automation course, you have to
I meant to say
complete.
manual, yeah. Like, is any of this will be useful for manual?
Yeah, for sure, like 100%. Trust me. So, Dmitry, in this course, let's say as an QA engineer, you will be working a lot once you start even doing, the manual position. But to be honest with you, I hate this part, when the people are calling it manual job. I call those engineers QA engineers because they're not doing like anything manual, because even though they like in quotes called manual, they have to work with code. They have to know basics of HTML and CSS. They should know how to create a website, how it works. They should be able to read the code, at least, just like I believe we had student here, was it the Olga, right? If I'm not mistaken, she worked as a manual engineer, but as she said, she doesn't know how to create Java code, but at least she knows how to read it, and that makes sense. And for the manual position, at least, as you call it, or everybody calls it, we suppose QA engineers to know HTML, CSS, to work with backend as well as the front end. So you basically, it's a junior position, but still you have to deal with code. And maybe AG will give you a better, idea.
Yeah, Dimitri, I totally hear you. On a day-to-day basis, I'm dealing with developers who are actually taking me into the code base, and they're showing me the changes that they're making. So it just allows me to kind of a better understanding of what they're doing, even though I can't code and I don't, necessarily know the language well, but I at least have some sense of what they're doing. So it is good to know. I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I also like think that way, that it's actually very beneficial for us to know even as manual. It's just from my experience when like I look at like what schools advertise in general, nobody really mentioned those things, but all basically just talk about different approaches, different type of testings, but nobody really like break it apart in a coding area. And that's why I was curious, like let's say if like somebody want to apply for manual, do they reflect it somehow on their resume that they have some knowledge of this? And if they do, what do they put?
Okay, yeah, I totally hear you, and yeah, that makes sense to me. But let's say that you run your own company, Dmitry, and you currently have your QA testing team, and let's say from business owner perspective, you want to hire people who wants a career growth, right? Even though if they start as a QA engineers, of course they want to make more money, right? And to make more money, they have to either they have to know more, they have to keep learning new stuff, learning new technologies. They have to stop doing the QA job. They have to create the testing framework that will make their job way easier. That is why it's very beneficial, if you have a look on it as a business owner, to hire people who wants career growth, if they will be sure that if they stick with your company, and you will give them such space, like learning new material, learning new programming languages, they will stick to you, and they will learn more, and eventually you don't have to hire new people from outside, from the street, because you will have your own specialists, and since they started like a QA engineers, they know product very well, and now as a QA automation engineers, they know how to test it in the better way. That is why. But that is why actually I had a lot of sync ups with my manager, and we discussed a lot about it. And during even in my company, if we want to hire someone, we expect for the QA position, we expect this person to have simple knowledge of either HTML, CSS, and some coding basics, like really basics. You don't necessarily have to create a Facebook, on your interview, but basics, yes, for sure.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, I have a question with regards to the specific language. So I know that you're diving into JavaScript. With regards to automation, I know like some frameworks they may require a little bit more Java-based. Some, of course, JavaScript. I know Cypress is like a framework that really lends itself well more to JavaScript. And then you have some frameworks like that are dealing better with Python. So my question is, in your course, if it's leaning more toward JavaScript, is it easy to switch to another language eventually if you need to go to another framework?
I would say if it is JavaScript and Python, then yes. If it is, if we are talking about the Java, then that switching process will be a little bit complicated. It's because Java is just completely different thing. The Java and JavaScript, they're not the same thing. But JavaScript and Python, those as a scripting languages, they have a lot of inbuilt methods. What is actually inbuilt method? Inbuilt method, this is just like what I have shown to you, like type of, right? And though both JavaScript and Python, they have a lot of magic words that which may make your work way easier if you compare it to the Python or to the Java or C# or C++ or whatever.
I see. Okay.
But the concept, once again, but the concept and the main idea will be the same. But it's will be different only because the programming language is different. But the idea will be still the same.
Sure. So if you're approaching like a position where they want you to know Selenium,
okay, yeah,
and I'm assuming Selenium is much heavier Java based than it is JavaScript, but other companies like my company deals a lot with JavaScript, and we deal with Cypress. And so for someone who knows Java, like I interviewed a few people for automation roles, and they mentioned to me, well, I know Java more than I know JavaScript, but since I know the core language, it'll take me a little time just to learn the JavaScript. Is it true the other way around as well, or you would have to dedicate some time to learn?
If you know Java very well, then it will be JavaScript, to start doing something in JavaScript, you do not have a lot of time, if you compare it to the Java.
Yeah.
If you know JavaScript and then you decided to start learning Java, it will be, that process will be a little bit complicated.
Sure.
A little bit, like, if you compare it from Java to JavaScript.
Sure. Would you say the market is more leaning towards JavaScript right now?
I would say so, only because of the React. So React, this thing was invented by the Facebook, and everybody is doing it right now like crazy. Everybody is into it right now because that thing, this is like a market changer right now.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions? No? Okay, guys. Let me show you actually on our project what we actually will be doing in our project. In our project, we will be working. I'll show you some HTML basics, some CSS basics. You will be working with it, and as a result, and of course JavaScript. And as a result, you will be working on your resume, which is actually, if you will see, this is located on the web page. This is a web page. This is HTML page, and it has like minimum functionality. I can click on the buttons, and as you can see, it has some text inside of it. And to create such document, web document, we use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And during my course, you will be doing the same thing. And each of the topics is related to the project, as I said. And for the creating homeworks, you will have your own documentation. It will give you, those documents, they are just basically instructions on what to do. For example, let me scroll up a little bit. Oh, where is it? For example, you have to run your code. You have to paste this part of the code here, and so on and so on. It will be very easy for you. I tried to create this document and thinking about the students who haven't been coding at all, like they have zero experience in coding. But once you finish my course, you will be prepared for our automation course, which will be more interesting. I mean, because you have to know more stuff. And this is actually it. And on our channel, I will post a homework on what you have to do. So once again, I would like to ask you if you have questions. If you do not have any questions, I wish you good night and have a rest of your day.
Can I ask you, there's another course next Thursday. Is that a continuation of this?
Yes, exactly. On the next course, we're going to learn about basic functions, and then today's course and the next Thursday's course, those guys will be connected. I want to merge two lessons into one, and as a result, you will be creating simple functions that will do some simple calculations. But to do that, you have to know data types, variables, and functions.
Okay. And then the full course after these two free ones starts at the end of November. Is that correct?
If I'm not mistaken, yes, it should be starting somewhere in the end of the November. But could you please double check it with on our Slack channel, because I'm only the teaching JavaScript.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
No problem. Yeah, no problem, guys. I hope I will see you on the next Thursday. And once this class is over, I will post today's classwork. I will create a link for you guys so that you can enter this link and work with data types on your with your own speed. Try to do some different manipulations with it. I'm totally fine. Yeah, you will be asked to do the homework as well, and we also will upload the video from today's class. So if you do not have any questions, good night. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.